Great. So if you guys haven't noticed yet, Kathy's not here. Last night, Kathy sends me an email. She has emergency oral surgery this morning.
Oh,
Yeah. So I'm sort of by myself, but always with all of you who are friends and who will have patience with me. But my friend Lexi's here too to help. Lexi's letting people in for me right now, so I can look at all of you. So I can do our awesome song Lexi and Maida have never heard. Okay. If you guys could all mute yourselves, that would be great.
Okay. Goodbye.
Hey, Diane and Laura, you guys are like right above each other. The same people always have their cameras on, like Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Kim. Kirsten, you're pretty, you like
hello.
on video. Got that one.
Mute.
Oh,
Oops.
all right. Well, I guess we're gonna start. We still have people coming in, but we are going to start. We're gonna kick things off. And I'm gonna do everything that Kathy and I do. So again, bear with me. All right. Maida, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Can you see everybody right now? Because I want you to just see what's about to happen, you and Lexi.
Yes, I can see
Well,
everyone.
it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Jimmy.
Yeah, that was Jimmy Snyder right there. Great. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Feedback Friday. I'm going to read from a script today that I usually prepare for Kathy Hattori. See Kathy Green laughing at me. Okay. So today is episode 90 episodes of Feedback Friday. And Maida is our featured person for the day here. This is our, oh, sorry, I have to put my little note in here. Today is episode 90, Kathy's having oral surgery edition. This is our weekly show where we speak with dyers, artists, scientists, writers, and scholars about our favorite topic, natural dyeing and color. I'm Amy Dufault, Sustainability and Communications Director at Botanical Colors, along with my friend and Fiber Shed person who's hiding out, Alexis Fuji, Membership and Learning Center Coordinator at Fiber Shed, Lexi Fuji. We run the Wasteful Working Group together. Very exciting. This week on Feedback Friday, we are welcoming Maida Branch, who I just love. Maida is the founder and director of Maida, a collective that supports the growth of Indigenous artists and the preservation of their homelands through sustainable business practices. Maida was born and raised in New Mexico and is of Pueblo, Ute, and Genízara descent. Her family has been living on Pueblo Territory since time immemorial. And inspired by her family and the land from which they came, she founded Maida in 2017, a collective of Indigenous and Indo-hispano artists. Artist stories are told by Maida via thoughtfully and collaboratively curated products, objects, photography, and short films about community, place, and re-matriation. Storytelling is also shared and told with Shed Project, Maida will be talking about as well, run by her partner, Johnny Ortiz. Together, they have an amazing farm in northern New Mexico where they live in a 200-year-old adobe home and raise, what kind of cattle is that?
Criollo.
Criollo, Criollo cattle and Churro sheep. So before we start, I want to send out a thank you to all of you for showing up every week, 90 weeks of this. And without you, we could not be doing what we do. We really do appreciate you. And for a little housekeeping, Lexi's going to be helping me out for a little while. I see Breeze Honeycutt's here. Maybe Breeze can help me for the second part. Lexi's letting people in right now, and I'll be posting some links from Maida as well about her shop and lots of other ways you can support Maida. We have everyone muted for the presentation, but we're going to be opening it up after the presentation, so you can post your questions in chat after. This call is being recorded, and we will have a video copy ready this weekend, actually by the end of day today. And I guess we're just gonna segue into the presentation with Maida.
Great.
Yep. And yeah, I'm gonna do some spotlighting, and you're on. And everybody, like I said, if you can, if you're not muted, please mute yourself.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen with everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I know it's because Botanical Colors is so awesome. And I'm so excited to be a part of Feedback Fridays on a Thursday. So thank you for having me. And thanks for listening. I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about where I'm from. New Mexico, just a kind of quick brief history of this place, is very particular and specific within the United States in its history. It is a place, like Amy said, that my family has been since time immemorial, since this land, has been Mexico since before it was Mexico. And to share a little bit about the history here, Puebloan people have lived on this land for thousands of years and have had settlements throughout the land in rock dwellings and various beautiful earth spaces throughout this place. Not necessarily a nomadic people, sedentary and very specific to this place and this terrain. The Spanish came in the late 1400s, funded by the Spanish crown as a way to discover and Catholicize the New World. They were funded in, as you I'm sure know, to explore a lot of the world, and ended up in the Southwest, settling here, colonizing here, and had a pretty long reign amongst the Puebloan people. And in they're doing so, they obviously forcefully or unforcefully intermarried. And so I am a descendant of that history. My family, some of my first family members came in those expeditions and settled here and have lived here ever since. A lot of my family also came in the 1800s as French fur trappers, and actually came to the eastern United States, moving west and settling in Taos, New Mexico, and eventually moving through the Mora Valley, which is has a pretty special history with wool, which I'll talk about later. They moved through that valley, moving cattle mainly, and settling in Dilia, New Mexico, which is where my family has the biggest presence besides Santa Fe today. So Dilia, New Mexico is a small village where my grandparents grew up and met. My grandma's father had a general store there, and she grew up with farm animals and farming, and in many ways lived a similar life to what I'm living today, although she didn't have electricity or running water or fiber optic internet like I get to. But it kind of skipped a generation, and my father lived in Santa Fe his entire life. My grandparents moved there in the 60s. There was no real work in rural living anymore. But why isn't it letting me change the slide? Here we go, sorry. No real economic support in rural living once the 60s rolled around. And so many people moved to bigger cities like Santa Fe or Albuquerque, Taos. So my family was one of those. They ended up moving to Santa Fe and starting an office supply company. It's so weird.
Sometimes it goes really slow, Maida. So
Okay.
just hit it once and don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are some of the cliff dwellings of Puebloan people in New Mexico. These are specifically in the Gila Mountains. My partner and I just went there for the first time in my life recently, and they're remarkable. This is my family on the right, my grandmother in white, my grandmother Maida in Dilia, New Mexico, with all of her brothers and sisters. My grandpa's side of the family on the left-hand side in El Rito, New Mexico, where he went to boarding school. He went to the normal school, quote unquote, where you learned English and were sent away from rural living in order to be educated. And my grandparents on the right with like a cool textile I realized in the background. I don't know where that is. I think my cousin took it, but very like city-like, as you can see. Stop beeping at me. Oh gosh.
Oh, there you go. You got it.
I hope that doesn't happen, everyone. That's my grandmother and I in Delia, my grandmother Maida. That's me in front of this old liquor store in Delia, New Mexico, which still exists. And we can go and pull up and have a drink in this cool dive bar. Amy.
You might. Are you using the arrow on your keyboard, or are you using the?
Yeah.
Sometimes on the very bottom of like the bottom left of each picture, there's like a little arrow that will show up. So you can use that too.
Okay.
Either one. Yeah, it's okay. They're going forward though.
Okay, cool. Sorry, guys. So yeah, that's a little bit about my family and their history to this place. And I've always been really enamored with our story, and not just our family story, but everyone that is from this place and indigenous to this place and has been here for generations. It's such a specific place in that it didn't become a state until it was one of the last states to acquire statehood. It was after the Pueblo revolt in the I guess it was 1680. The Puebloan people revolted against the Spanish, and they successfully had a 10-year reign without the Spanish for a certain 10 years until the Spanish came back and reconquested Mexico. Had a rule here for a long time, and then eventually we became a state. But you can feel a sense of all of those histories in this place. It's very embedded in its people and in the work that is being made, which I'll talk about in terms of textiles, but also ceramics and silver jewelry, which has a history actually tracing back to Morocco and Northern Africa and moving up to Spain. That way, being brought here by the conquistadors that came and brought that with it. Weaving has that history as well. And so I was really interested in these stories, and was at a place, I was living in New York City, where I felt like it was actually the only thing that I cared the most about. And so I decided to move back home to be with my family and to be in this place that I loved so much. And I started what is now Maida, and it's a collective of Indigenous and Indo-hispano artists from this place who work in different ways and tell their story of who they are in different ways. I have, you can check out the website maidagoods.com and to see more about the artists and who's involved. Today I'll focus primarily on the textile artists, but I have an amazing silversmith I work with who makes jewelry and that I design. He's Navajo, Gino Antonio. He was actually the first artist that I started collaborating with and working with. Camila Trujillo is an amazing ceramicist. Brandon Ortiz, who's the brother to my partner Johnny, who I'll speak about, is an amazing ceramicist, also part of the collective, working with micaceous clay. And I'll speak to who else is involved here in a minute. But the idea behind Maida and starting Maida has always been a love story, a coming home story. And I felt like it was, many ways expressive of this love story I have with this place, the story about coming home, and in a very literal way, but also in a way of us as a people navigating what home is, who we are. We're both Native and Spanish, some of us more one than the other, and reconciling that, and in the different ways that we do that through making objects or through the various ways that people here are able to share that. And so I wanted to amplify that story and be able to have a platform in which people could share, and I could share that with more than I was able to in other ways. So that's how it began, and I curate the objects that are sold on the shop. I started making films about the artists. I love taking film photos, so there's always those to help support what the objects are and who made them. And it just has grown and become kind of a bigger project that is now included in this farm that I'm living on in northern New Mexico. So that's where my story evolves as well. I met Johnny Ortiz, my partner, years ago, and we started working together in the collective as where it became friends, but also he's an amazing artist in so many ways. But also what I wanted to share through Maida was his ceramic work. This is Johnny and I getting a Christmas tree on the right, I think a couple years ago, up where we live. But he uses micaceous clay, which is specific to Taos Pueblo, where he's from. Micaceous clay he digs and processes himself, pit fires it, and I have some pictures of them, but let's see. I found out what I have to do. I have to click and then hit the arrow. Okay, so that's Johnny and some of his ceramics in his studio. This was actually an Architectural Digest this month. But in addition to ceramics, he is also a chef, and doesn't really call himself that because it's so much more than that, and also he's not limited to that. But this on the right are some pictures of his beautiful food that he serves on the ceramics that he makes. There's carne seca, and as you can see, like the black plated ceramics beneath his food that is all wildly foraged in New Mexico, and was served in small scale dinners of 10 people for a long time. The dinners aren't happening right now as we rebuild the space, but I fell in love with him for many reasons, but also what I love is his ability to tell the story of where he's from in a lot of ways, but also through food and through foraging, which I know you guys talk a lot about on this. And so we came together and started working together, and now we live in a 200-year-old adobe in northern New Mexico on 22 acres and have lots of animals, which I have pictures of too, but these are just some more of his ceramic work. Those are our Criollo cows. That's me and our dog Arcus. And I'm just very, the story, this part of the story is important in the sense that it really brought me back, like actually to the land and to this place I'm from in a really tactile, real way, where I was raising animals, where I am raising animals, and helping support this farm and have this amazing teacher that is my partner teaching me about this land and the plants that are from this place and their medicinal qualities, as well as the spiritual relationship to them. And these are all things that I didn't grow up with, and that I was really yearning for in coming home. And I didn't really know like who would be that teacher. They're all the artists within the collective do that for me. They teach me so much and teach me about who I am and who my family is, and this history that's really been lost just because of assimilation and the want and need to become American. And so I really asked that in a way to myself of, how can I learn more about what has been lost and what my grandparents knew, but maybe didn't want to share because they were afraid to. And Johnny's been so integral to that and teaching me so much about the old ways, so to speak, or the ways in which our ancestors lived, and the ways in which we can apply that to our everyday life. And so our landrace animals are just one of those ways, in that we specifically raise animals that are well adapted to the high desert. These Criollo cows were brought by the Spanish and are originally from Andalusia, the Iberian Peninsula. They eventually evolved into Corriente, which I'm sure you're maybe more familiar with. But these aren't all bulls. These are actually heifers. They just all have horns. They're able to herd. They're herd animals. They protect themselves. They are able to survive off of very little water and food, although they have plenty to graze on where we are. So they were brought by the Spanish because of their ability to survive, essentially, and have adapted really well to this place. They have small hooves, which is amazing for aerating the soil. They're really so much smaller than any typical like Angus beef cow, which is more commonly raised around here. They're smaller. They can be used for meat or dairy. They're also really sweet and come up to us like our dogs do. This is our dairy cow, Dolores. She's not really native to this place. She's more native to Ireland and the Isles, but she's amazing. And she was our first cow, and she's definitely our favorite. These are our Churro sheep. And you all might be more familiar with Churro and the amazing wool that comes from them. They also were brought here by the Spanish and are very well adapted to this climate and place. And they similarly are just very, can survive off of little water and food, and their lanolin in their wool keeps them really warm and also very cool in summer. They have no birthing problems. They're really like hardy and able to not have disease and things that are kind of harder for other animals in this climate. And so, like I said, in meeting Johnny, he's taught me a lot about foraging. And in the summertime, that's pretty much all we do is run around picking things, and from mushrooms to many different things that we use for foods or that we dry in the summer for the winter to be used then. And so we wanted to start exploring dyeing things with the things that we were picking. We had this access to wool from our Churro sheep, and we wanted to be able to give it to weavers to use and have it naturally dyed in the way that, our ancestors did, but also like textiles we love are much more in a natural aesthetic, so to speak, of all coming from the earth and in the color that's attributed to it. So on the left is just some things that we foraged. There's wild hops and morel mushrooms, boletes, prunes or plums. So I did many dye tests this past summer, which was really fun, with just little pieces of our wool that had been processed, spun, but nothing additional to it. Here's some cochineal on the right that we found recently. I didn't find much, so it's not what's used in the textiles that I'll show in a bit, but it's fun to know that it exists and that maybe we can harvest more of it, or maybe Amy was suggesting have some hanging in our space and have them just like copulate in our sunroom, perhaps. A close up of the cochineal. So the Churro, like I said, are the wool that are the sheep that we have, and we have now close to 20 sheep. In the summertime, Johnny hand shears them himself, and I want to learn this summer, but we'll see how that goes. It's hard work, and he was sore for like 2 weeks afterwards. I think it took him a few days to do all of our sheep. But then we take it to Mora, which I had mentioned earlier, which is a smaller town in the Taos Valley. And it is the only place that has a wool mill west of the Mississippi that's still functioning and in existence today. And we're able to take all of our wool there, and it's a nonprofit currently, and it's run by one man, and I think he has 2 employees. This is JD. He's the man. And they inherited a bunch of machinery, I think from the east somewhere, and that other mills that had closed along the way. So they have really incredible infrastructure in terms of machinery. It's crazy because he's like one of the only people that knows how to run a lot of this machinery. But my hope is that we can work also to make it so this place never goes away, because it's an incredible resource to the community, but also for us, we're dependent on it for the processing of our wool, and love going there, love supporting them, and love checking out the machinery. So we get it all processed at the Mora mill, like I mentioned, and this is on the right skeins of our wool in its most natural state. On the right, it's been dyed with logwood, so it's darker, as you can see on the table there. But to the left are the most natural colors that we get from our sheep. They mix the white and black. We have more white than black. We have some brown. And so right now we're just mixing all of the wool together. I think this year we're gonna try to separate it a bit more for color. But just to give you a sense of what it looks like before we dye it. So we had all this wool, we wanted to dye. Our really good friend, Josh DeFoya, who's here on the left and is in the Maida collective, had started weaving a few years ago. He grew up with Johnny, and he was already educated in fashion, went to Parsons, lived in New York for a decade, had moved back home during the pandemic, and Johnny had encouraged him to start weaving. He's an incredible patternist, sewer, has a beautiful sense for wearables and how they hang on the body, and also just besides the way in which we've collaborated, creates these amazing silhouettes and worlds of clothing, and they're almost sculptural. They're incredible. So definitely check out Josh's work. And Johnny encouraged him to start weaving, and he, in doing so, found out that he came from a long line of weavers, and that his father would fix looms for his aunts back in the day. And so he inherited a loom from his aunt, who he also learned worked at the Mora mill for many years and helped run it. And he taught himself how to weave. And he made this incredible piece on the right, which we call the Martinez. On the left are more of our skeins that I dyed this summer, which were used in some blankets I'll show you in a bit. But this was our first woven piece that we had in the shop on Maida, the first textile that I helped design. He was able to, I wanted this kind of cape-like piece, and he was able to develop this gorgeous multi-panel textile that's sewn together in addition to being woven, and hangs so beautifully on the body. It's also like the warmest thing I've ever put on my body, because it's all Churro wool. It's all wool from our sheep. It does have a cotton warp. We've since started using wool warp, but initially we were using cotton. He dyed the darker wool, as you can see with the logwood. And all these photos are at the Mora mill. This is a baby blanket that he recently made. I dyed the yellow with kota flower, and he dyed some logwood. The lighter color is the natural color of our wool. And the pink, which I don't know if you can kind of see at the bottom, the fringe, is a wool warp that he dyed with cochineal from Botanical Colors, actually. We're calling them the baby blankets. And as you can see, his weave is like specific to me. I feel like now that I'm starting to collaborate with more weavers, I also am seeing the distinction in people's weave, which is really beautiful to see. It almost like a paint stroke on a painting. You know, you can distinguish who the artist is by their style and technique. And something that I know Josh really advocates for is textiles being on a level of other visual artworks, or you know, being reverenced in a way that is with as much honor as we do other things, even though they're functional and wearable and usable. But also it's exciting with Maida right now to be able to tell these artist stories, because I think with a lot of textiles and the textile history in New Mexico, I've grown up seeing beautiful Navajo rugs hanging somewhere, but I have no idea who made them. I don't know the history of that person. I would love to, and I'm sure, you know, there are ways in which those stories could be told still, but aren't. And so unless the family is able to, or gets a hold of their grandmother's piece that was sold in the 1950s. So I think it's really exciting to be able to tell kind of a modern textile story, and who's actively making weavings in the tradition that's been happening for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so with Josh, it's really exciting because he's, you know, our age and he's family. So we get to work together and in a lot of different like types of collaboration. Susie, who's here on the right, Susie Garcia, I recently started working with. She is originally from the Espanola Valley in New Mexico. She now lives in Nambe, New Mexico. And she has been weaving for almost 30 years. She was taught by the Trujillo weaving family in Chimayo, which Chimayo has a very long history of weaving specific to weaving that village. So there's multiple weaving shops that have been there since the Spanish came. A lot of the Spanish brought looms or parts of what is now the Rio Grande loom, so that they could, with other pieces of wood, assemble a loom once they were here. And that style of loom is still used today. This is a Rio Grande loom, 2 weft. She has about 6 in her space. This is the loom in which she can make about 30 by 60 pieces. Anything larger she would sew together. And like I said, she was taught by this long-standing weaving family and continues to work there today. She goes in there weekly and weaves and sews for them. And I met her at Spanish Market this past summer, which is an annual market that celebrates quote unquote Spanish art, which is kind of complicated to say because it's, at this point, it's so interwoven with traditions and time and story, and it's not Spanish. We're not just Spanish. That's not really who we are. However, it distinguishes artists from the Indian market, which happens a couple weeks later, which is specific to Native people from all over the country. It's like the biggest gathering of Native artists, but it distinguishes those styles. And I'm excited to kind of question that in a way, because like Susie was saying, there are things she submits that are rejected in the market because they're too native looking, or they're not Spanish enough. And so this idea of categorizing, you know, expression is weird. And so I hope that also with Maida, with my project, I can share the intricacies of what it is and how it all comes together. I've been really inspired by this space, the Martinez Hacienda, which is in Taos, New Mexico, where my partner Johnny is from. He was like, we got to go to the Martinez Hacienda. I'd never been. And it's an old hacienda that was inhabited by the Martinez family. Padre Martinez is kind of a famous historical figure in New Mexico. He, in many ways, was like a politician that's power extended much beyond the church, but was very revered and supported by the people here. And he was really anti-American initially, and become in us achieving statehood, he wanted to maintain our more Mexican identity. And this space that he grew up is a space that you can visit today and see their old living spaces. I won't show all those pictures, but I wanted to highlight the rooms that have the textiles in them because I've been so inspired by those textiles. They're so beautiful to me in their simplicity. just like really simple stripe. Johnny and I always talk about how, in terms of design, they were like, well, I have this piece and I have this piece and I have this wool and we need it to serve this purpose, for this bed, but how beautiful, it's so, to me, so beautiful in its simplicity. So I really wanted to recreate these blankets and rugs. And the one on the right is the one I envisioned creating first. So we've done our first run of these blankets, and I'm working with Susie on these. This is our kind of interpretation of that blanket that's in the previous slide on the right. Oops. And we're calling this the Martinez blanket collection. This specific one is called the Maria Luz, which is the name of the daughter actually of Padre Martinez. This is all our wool. We dyed this all ourselves. Have the cota, the cochineal, the indigo, and there's some white in there that isn't the natural, but the gray is, as you can see. These are 30 by 60. And as you can see also, like Susie's weave is so specific to her, it's so tight. And I feel like her 27 years of weaving are expressed in every line. This is now available through Shed Project, my partner's name of his project and website, which we have created like an entire ecosystem, that is the farm. We are now sharing that through this website, in which you can check out the Mercado and see his ceramics for sale and many other things. But these blankets will now be available on that Mercado. I'll give some details about that in a bit. But I want to show you these other photos I have of Susie on her loom. And I wish I could show you a video, because she does this so quickly, like moving so fast, speaking to me all the way like she wasn't doing anything, just chatting like casually. This one on the right is the second piece, and that's a part of the collection. This is the Antonio, also all our churro wool. Choke cherry is the pink color, indigo from Botanical Colors, Cota, and our natural colored wool. There's the Antonio next to some of Johnny's ceramics. And this one on the right is called the Martine. This is our wool mixed with some of Susie's wool, just to get those bright colorways. But the choke cherry is that kind of deeper red, and we threw some cochineal in there too, all with the wool warp. So I'm so excited that these are in the world now, and I want to share more about all the things, but I want to give time for questions too, and any comments or anything else you guys want more information on. But that's kind of an overview of Maida and my work on the farm, and how I got into dyeing and working with our wool. And I'm hoping now that the textile collections will be a continuous thing. We need more sheep, so we're getting more sheep hopefully soon, because we need more wool, and we also just love having them on the land, so that we can have the ability to use their wool and actually share it. And so we'll do another run of these Martinez blankets that will look a bit different. But when I have the wool, hope to be sharing it and creating things with different weavers. But thank you so much for listening.
Maida?
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, stop the share. So beautiful. Everything's just so beautiful. And I love the stories behind everything. So thanks for sharing them with us.
Thanks for letting me tell them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you figured out that little button too.
Yeah,
You're a little bit of a perfectionist with those things.
I just hang out with cows all day. I don't look at my computer too much. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, I'm just going to jump into questions. Okay.
Great.
Okay. How long did it take to develop the colorways? I came in late. What type of sheep do you have?
We have churro sheep, And we have their amazing thick wool, which people say, isn't the softest. They've been since kind of bred to have a softer wool. Ours are more older genetics. So technically the wool isn't as soft, but I wish you could feel the textiles now. They're so soft, so incredibly soft and luscious. The colorways, it was basically a trial and error based on what I could forage and what made colors that I liked. So we messed around with choke cherry quite a bit just because I have a ton of it. We have a ton of it growing everywhere. We had the indigo and the cochineal from Botanical Colors. The Kota flower we pick a ton of for tea and for Johnny's cooking. And I did a test with that and it turned the brightest yellow. So I knew I wanted to include that. And then we really loved the natural color of the Churro wool that it has on its own. So we wanted to highlight that. So that was how we got the colorway. And I thought about how it was comparable to those pieces I mentioned in the Martinez Hacienda. And, if they were still telling that kind of colorway story, but I'm excited for this summer to forage more and do more tests because fall came quickly. And before I knew it, I couldn't really pick anything to do more tests with, but this summer I'll start earlier.
Right. But there's two people asking about the choke cherry and is choke cherry color or light fast? I don't know if you want to talk to that at all. I know you're still testing things, but.
Yeah. So choke cherry color. So the way we did it is so choke cherry is like a sour cherry. And they're pretty small here, but we just took a big vat of them and simmered them. And I did different tests with it, with them just like that being simmered. I did different tests with the pits, and then I did different tests with the pulp. So I'm not sure what light fast means. I'm new to all of this, but.
You don't even have to address light fastness at all, but it's like, so many people talk about light fastness and it's not an argument, but it's, there's people who believe in color that it just evolves. And there's people who, if you're doing production for somebody and you have to have consistent color, then you definitely want to make sure it's light fast or color fast.
I see,
a project to work on, but yeah.
I see.
Okay. Let's see. Laura's asking, do you felt the blankets at all, or what happens when they are taken off the loom?
I know Josh has a specific technique of brushing them once they're off the loom. So he brushes them quite a bit to help them set and tighten and soften. And Susie does the same. She brushes. Hers are so pressed that she weights them.
Michelle is asking, okay, wondering a bit about the silver work you do. Have you heard anything about broomstick silver work? I've been fascinated to learn about, but not found any info or pictures. A woman I inherited my loom from taught in the Navajo Nation, and they taught her this style from what I understand.
No, I don't know that, but I'll have to ask Gino because I'm the silversmith I work with. I'm sure he's familiar. His process is tufa casting. So he pours the silver in a tufa rock that's been carved with the design. I didn't really highlight this, but this is an arrowhead that we sell and that I make, or that I designed and he makes. You can see the texture of the tufa rock there. So I wonder if that's similar to what you're talking about or not, but this is more specific to his style, is the tufa cast.
You say you went to school at Parsons, or do you have formal art education?
I did not go to Parsons. Josh Tafoya, one of the weavers that I work with, did. I went to school at the new school, however, for my graduate degree in drama. My background was actually in performance and acting. So I guess it's kind of a formal art education, although not in the visual world necessarily, or design world at all.
Do you have good luster with your Churro sheep?
Yeah, we have great luster. I put more pictures of that.
Gray luster from the Churro?
Some sheep have more than others, and I think that's related to the older genetics. Some feel like distinctly and look distinctly older, but the newer ones, not so much.
Thanks, Brees. Brees was putting in the link for the Martinez blankets and the password in there too that you sent to me for people to use.
Yes.
I was trying to sneak links in there as you were talking for all things wool and yeah.
Yeah.
So Kristen's asking, what do you do to the wool before you dye it? Does it need some kind of chemical processing after it comes from the mill? And do you dye the yarn or the fleece?
So there's no chemical processing at the mill or after, except, I mean, once we get it, we do mordant it. And I use the mordant from Botanical Colors. I chose to mordant it because I just wanted to ensure it's setting and staying. And I'm very new to dyeing as well. So it was an exploration of that for the first time. I do tests often without mordanting or doing anything to the wool prior. And I often find that the color is actually really similar with our wool, even if I don't mordant it. But I want to, when it's a piece that I'm selling and sharing, just because I want to ensure that the color stays.
So I'm going to ask you my own question. So with you and Johnny and partnering up and combining your worlds and that overlap of food and fiber, have you found that the audience that your audiences are coming together and they're thinking about food as much as they're thinking about fiber or design? Not everything you do is fiber.
Absolutely. I think the textiles, since we just released them through the Shed website, so I encourage everyone to check it out because we've recently launched a membership in which you can be a parciante, which is the name of someone who's a part of the acequia system or the ancient irrigation system that exists throughout New Mexico. And so we wanted to develop a way for people to be involved who aren't in New Mexico, who are far away, but to be able to look at what we're doing and how we're doing it through video work that I've been archiving for 2 years, or interviews with elders and different people in our community that are important to us, essays, photos of Johnny's, and more information about his practices and how he does them. Because in the meantime, we're fixing up this space to do the dinners, Amy, the beautiful offerings that Johnny has through food in that space. But until then, we wanted to be able to also give away for people, to have a sense of what's going on. And I think Johnny has an incredible design sense and eye, and that's clear in the way he plates food and the way he creates a space that you're in to have that food. And even like, I often say he's an engineer in the sense that, he was able to also have this like incredible way of bringing people together and breaking bread. And you'd be sitting next to a hydrologist, but also you'd be sitting next to someone from the Taos Pueblo. But, there's these amazing stories of people that have come together at his dinners and still talk today and are still friends, all through his food and his sense of place and beauty and sharing that. So I think being able to do that now with fiber and the sheep is really exciting, because I think it's integral to his story, but it's also integral to what I've been doing with Maida. And it just seemed like made so much sense to share it together. And I think people I've been seeing through Shed are really excited to see what he's been doing for a long time, also expressed through textiles and wool that he's had access to and support. So
Maida, I think one of the things that I want you to talk a little bit more about is, first of all, yourself. And we love Johnny and all his work too, and we love the crossover. But one of the things that, like, when I first met you a couple of years ago, I love this. You were living in Brooklyn, and that's when you were thinking about going home. Can you talk a little bit more about what that process was of just like, so I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna do this? I think there's this, I think, moment for many people. They want to go home. They want to start something new or get back in touch with their roots in some way, or this homecoming. but they don't know how. But can you just talk, if as personal as you want to, just about that story about going home?
Yeah, I feel very lucky that I am from a really specific place that I can call home, and that I want to go back to, and that I love being here. But we all are Indigenous to somewhere, and our families and ancestors all come from somewhere. So that is a story we all have. But I think that I felt like in New York, I wasn't able to express in whatever capacity, in performance or in writing, while I was in New York, my story as truthfully as I wanted to, or be as kind of authentic as I could be, because I just wasn't on this land that I'm from, and I wasn't surrounded by these things that I felt really make me me. And also that I felt like if I didn't go back home, they'd go away and they'd be lost forever. And I wouldn't know those stories, and I wouldn't be able to tell them to my children and my grandchildren. And I wouldn't be able to even share those things with my grandparents and people that were still alive in my life that I wanted to learn from. So that just became the most important thing suddenly. And it became so clear that then I needed to move home to tell that story. Didn't make sense to tell it in New York anymore. And so that was the best decision I ever made. And it's now, and I'll be about 4 years, but I never thought I'd come home as quickly as I did. But it's funny how life works and brings you places you never thought you'd be. And then once you're there, you're like, oh yeah, it makes complete sense. I live on a farm now with cows. It makes somehow. So
Yeah, it's having been there, it's a very, very cool place. You need to protect that place from others.
yeah, well, and for everyone that's on this talk, Amy's going to send out a link with the password to the shed website, so you can really explore everything we're doing and see more about everything that we're talking about in our homeland and the ways in which we share it. So she'll share that password, and it will be available for a month. And then after that, if you want to become a member, you can. It's $20 a month, and it helps us support our animals and our livelihood and the ability to share these stories and share this work. So I'm excited for you guys to get a peek into it in the meantime.
All right, let's see. Where are we? Oh my gosh, it's 5 of.
I know.
Look at us. It's like perfection with this. Okay, well, thank you so much for spending time with us today and telling your story. And like, it's everything you do is beautiful. The storytelling, whether it's for the jewelry or the wool or just the personal story of how you came home, that idea of it being a love story. I completely believe in that love story. Love it. And yeah, so thanks so much. And then, like Maida said, I will have I'm going to have the video post up today, and I will put all the links there to everything on the site, as well as for the shed project and different ways that you can all get involved.
Thanks, Amy. Thank you so much for creating this space for people to share. So thank you all for wanting to listen. So nice to meet you all this way, and hope to keep in touch, and feel free to reach out about anything. So
yeah, and I'll put your Instagram feed in there too, because it's really beautiful and inspiring too.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just throw out some little notes here, and then everybody can unmute themselves after and say hi and bye to Maida. But so we just opened a Cape Cod Farm and Forage workshop with Sasha Doerr. That will be June 27th and 28th here on the Cape, my favorite farm. I'm so excited. Kathy's going to come here. Sasha's going to be here. And it'll be 2 one-day events, which will be 10 to 4. on both of those days. On that Wednesday, we're going to be there. There's a farm buffet. So I'm going to be creating a little natural dye pop-up with as many people as I can grab from New England who use our dyes and who want to sell there. And we'll have music and food, and it'll be awesome. So I hope if you're anywhere around Massachusetts, I see people buying tickets already, and they are from all over the United States. So totally excited to meet you all in person. And it coincides with our 100th episode of Feedback Friday. So it's going to be a shindig, a major shindig. All right. We also have dye inks and dye ink books on sale until the end of the month. So you can see that on our sale page. I love the dye books. I have gotten into dye, like using my dye baths to make inks and paints, and just, it's a different way to express yourself through your dyes. And with World Water Day, and I think it's National Pigment Day next week, actual things. Maybe we can all celebrate that by making some pigments out of our dye baths and saving water and making the pigments. Next week on Feedback Friday, we have Kathy answering all your natural dye questions, because you have them. We get them all the time, every week. How do I get my kutch to be more red? How do I use an iron vat and make it, darker? How do I do this? So come with all your questions, whatever your questions, Kathy will answer them. And she will also have, she said she might be able to do some kind of a demo. She definitely won't have her mouth full of gauze, which will be great. So she'll be able to talk and have her teeth all taken care of. Poor thing. All right. And I guess that's it. Phew. Doing stuff without Kathy is just crazy. But if you guys want to unmute and say hello and goodbye to Maida and to each other, go for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
That was
you.
lovely. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Thank you, Maida.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye-bye. Is it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look at that, was just funny. It's just like it's like a reshuffling of cards, all the little squares.
Cry. So sweet.
I know. I love when we first started Feedback Friday, we started as a, I guess it was like a webinar. So all you could see was the person talking, and you couldn't see everybody else. And then we're like, that is so not fun. We want to see everybody if we can. So
Yeah.
we just
It's
bit
so
the bullet
cool.
and did it like this.
Oh, it's the best. I'm glad you did.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that people are still coming in? What is happening? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
It's
Okay,
because
I'm
the
gonna add
time
one
changed.
thing to the